Welcome to the live China EVs and More podcast. We will open the room up at around the 40-minute mark to anyone who's keen to ask us any questions. So feel free to post them on X or YouTube. In the next hour or so, my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important, interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. To our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. We ask that you smash those subscribe and like buttons so you don't miss anything from us in the future. Also, I'm confident that Lei and I are two of the best in the world at doing this, so help us get the word out about this show and podcast to others. My name is Tu Lee. I'm the managing director at Sinowato Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinowatoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. A local Beijing Lei Xing, can you please introduce yourself?
A 1 week on the ground. Time flies. And good evening from Beijing. This is your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 191. 191, and a Friday the 13th edition.
Ooh.
And leading up to this ominous day was pretty much a disastrous, ugly second half of this past week, brought to you by Ji Yue and Ji Yue. There's actually both names exist, and obviously many other events, headlines, but I think this is worth probably talking first because it's still developing as we speak.
Still developing. And I've spoken to some Baidu folks. They are also taking a lot of questions because they're a major investor, the only other investor really in Jiyue. So the fallout has broadened significantly from just those initial set of videos that were posted on Chinese social of Xi Jinping addressing his concerned employees, some of them now ex-employees. But Lei, you're on the ground. When did you start seeing things? When you start hearing things?
Well, this is one of the things that's it was both surprising and not surprising. Not surprising, we knew that many of these newer brands are kind of on the chopping block, but it was surprising the way it happened so abruptly. And the high was the launch of the Robo X just less than a month ago.
Was it less than a month ago, right?
Yeah. And the low was CEO Xi Jinping almost getting ambushed by employees in that viral video. And only
I give him a ton of credit for not hiding in that conference room.
Well, he came out of that conference room, and I mean his I guess PR guys were trying to hold him back. He's like, no, I got to go out and I got to talk. But let's rewind a little bit. Ji Yue, for those that may have not heard of this company, is a joint venture between Geely and Baidu, and this is considered it's a golden combination, right? We have Geely, the OG, the private automaker in China, and Baidu, the Google of China, one of the supposedly leading autonomous driving companies AI companies teaming up to form this brand only 3.5 years ago. At the same time,
Geely, one of the only truly global Chinese automotive companies.
yeah. And so this was a 55-45 joint venture between Baidu and Geely. And a little bit before they launched this their first vehicle, they had to change their name, actually the product and the brand name, to Ji Yue. And they actually set up a new entity in order to meet the production approvals. And this new entity, Ji Yue, is actually 65% owned by Geely and 35% owned. 65% owned by Geely and 35% owned by Baidu. I may have gotten that reversed because it's so complicated, right? Geely always have, this conglomerate, the most complicated companies. And they had only launched this O1 in October of 2023, so just a little bit over a year ago. And sales haven't been great. Early this year, it was only a few hundred a month, and only until the summertime, when it got into the 2000s, 3000s, and then November, it dropped back into the 2000s. And then we had this debacle, this event happening right the 2 days when the economic working conference was being held. And hence, I think this company it's becoming a national story. This Jiyue event, not only in the EV and the auto industry, because it happened in this economic work conference. And that economic work conference, the central theme was stability, people's livelihood.
The Iron
So
Bowl.
I think, yeah. And so I think Baidu and Geely, for a while, we were like, why are they not talking? Because they're the shareholders, they're the parent companies. And now they came out with this statement just this afternoon, basically saying they'll take care of the social security payment, the employees that have left, and they're still working on a solution. There's no concrete measures being put out yet, but I think, at least from a PR perspective, parent companies, they are investors, they are shareholders. They have to put out a statement. So that's where we stand right now.
In Lei, let me add a little color. To summarize succinctly, Baidu was bringing the brains, Geely was bringing the brawn, and it seemed like a pretty good collaboration. And it was clear that Geely wasn't really taking a driver's seat. They were really going to allow the Jiyue management team, who consists of Xiaoping and, we have spoken with and spoken about many times Frank Wu, a friend of ours. And so, and the products design seemed to be designed very well, but they were very techy. No physical buttons effectively. There might be a handful of physical buttons in the 01. And yeah, they just really, really didn't take off. And blame that on not connecting with the customers on social media, blame it on the price war, blame it on the competition. All of the above is true. And I'm actually very surprised that Baidu and Geely, being so prominent in the tech space in China and the automotive space, didn't really want to do more. Maybe this is one of those situations, Lei, where instead of these companies feeling that they should do everything for the startup, they didn't do enough. And one of the other things is Jiyue spread itself pretty thin. 140 retail locations in 40 cities. That's a lot. to manage. And in November, when sales of passenger or NEVs was like 1.5 million units, they sold 2,500, so less than 0.01% or something like that. So, yeah, you can't run successful companies if you're constantly that deep in the red. Now, none of these companies are really making money, but remember that Ji Yue is kind of like a Lucid, kind of like a Ribbon. They need these injections of capital. If they don't get it, then they don't have any longer lifelines. So
yeah, so you mentioned, we peel on the onions and we dive into some of the factors leading to this, and I think they're probably done. This demise. I think that this is one of the greatest demises of 2024 in the China smart EV sector. You mentioned about channels. Actually, that is one of the reasons I think they're lacking that footprint a bit compared to the others. It's still a relatively new brand, and hence, Zhou Xia was thrusted into doing this live streaming because that was one way to get the brand out. And little did he know that the amount of traffic that he got from this one event was more than all of his previous live streams of trying to sell the car. I think this channel is actually an issue. And the other rumor that was not confirmed was about the book, that they were somehow in the red, and I think it was Baidu wasn't willing, or Geely, because remember this collaboration, this partnership, Geely is acting essentially as a contract manufacturer, and they have to pay Geely, and Geely is kind of like a supplier. So I would say Jiyue is more of a Baidu's baby than a Geely's baby. So Geely didn't want to. I mean, these were rumors. So, and plus the fact you talked about the product, right?
Because let me add some detail to your statements here, Lei. Remember that Geely has Geometry, Lynk & Co., Zeekr, Geely brand, Lotus, Polestar. Am I missing anything? The London Cab Company.
Smart.
They already have a portfolio of brands that they need to reconcile, manage, invest in, and build products for. So the last thing they need is another brand to be managed. And yes, we always have to remember how capital intensive the automotive space is, and they're reserving capacity at factories that Geely factories. If that capacity or the sales don't come, that capacity is underutilized, which puts even more pressure on Geely, which puts even more pressure on the other brands for Geely to perform better. And so, to your point, yeah, I don't know if Geely was going to write a check, and I equate the Baidu and Jiyue as like a Huawei with those SOE.
Yeah, so Xiaomi, Huawei, Baidu's. Remember when the Jiyue brand was announced, when this was formed in March 2021? Guess what? Right at the same time, Xiaomi announced its entry into the EV. So this was looked at as Baidu's attempt into making an EV, and alongside Xiaomi's attempt into making an EV. But Baidu had the
very successful, right? Seemingly, at least initially. Yeah. One we're seeing blow up. So
yeah, and I was gonna say about the product side of it. I think it was, it's difficult for us to we have to appreciate, because we talked to Frank Wu and how much effort he put into this company, how much effort he tried to make this, in terms of styling, in terms of design, a original. And I still do think that this is one of the few, really, I think, original, pretty looking designed vehicles in the smart EV space in China. And for this to happen, I think is really sad that so much work has put into this, and to get to this point is really a bit sickening. Either the 01 or the 07. But having said that, the features, the quirkiness that the vehicles had, the yoke steering wheel, the no door handles, was that too much? Well, we can look into what happened to Hi-Fi. That was a vehicle that also was too much, and Hi-Fi is gone. So, right, these are all the factors that we think channel product, Faraday Future, channel product, maybe management wise, that it was a failed attempt.
I described it, Lei, as like too techy.
Yeah.
It seemed a little bit unrelatable to the everyday person, everyday Chinese consumer.
No, I mean the idea is really good. I think a lot of original ideas, but I mean, we talked to Frank, right? But and you and I both saw the vehicles. Even Frank was, I met him at the Jiyue store, and he personally toured me with the 01. It was unlike anything we've ever seen before. But maybe that was what did it in. Unfortunate. And
I believe the 07 is probably one of the best designed vehicles in the world in 2024, for sure. Not just Chinese. I'm saying it's a beautiful car, and it seems like now it just never had a chance to succeed. But for those that are wondering, the West, that why there's no collapses, they're happening, and now we have to monitor, Lei, because collapses are kind of like a disease, like a virus. More and more catch them. And this goes to an article that was printed or posted a couple of days ago about BYD having tens of thousands of inventory sitting at the port in Brazil. Because what we're going to see in 2025, unfortunately, is a lot more protectionism likely. And it's going to be mainly from Chinese electric vehicles. I think that the Trump administration is really opening the door for other countries to do the same. And, Europe has already done it. But the battleground region where there's a lot of new opportunity is South America, Latin America. Now, Brazil is by far the largest market in South America, and BYD, Great Wall, Chery, Volkswagen, Stellantis, GM, Hyundai, they've all invested each billions of dollars or announced investments. And so that's going to be the new battleground. It looks like sales growth for the EVs have flattened out. And we also have to remember that South America, led by Brazil, their clean energy of choice is ethanol because of the sugar cane that gets grown in Brazil. So it's an interesting region to keep an eye on. A region that I've been invited to visit, but I haven't done it yet. So likely in 2025, maybe you could come with me, Lei. Anyways, so.
Well, it's a part of America, so Americas. So, but I think we end on this Jiyue sour note.
No, let me put you on the spot a little bit. There's a bunch of videos of him talking to his staff, right at the Robosphere. What's it called? And
RoboBates.
roadways. What was he saying to them? Like generally,
Well, no, he's just saying, hey, I want to talk to you guys. Be patient. I'm trying to figure out things myself. Things like that. But the employees, obviously, they're not, they're asking, why did this happen all of a sudden? And why about the stopping payment of Social Security? What's going to happen for the payment going forward? They want answers, and he didn't have answers. And right now, as of
yeah.
this
So
moment, neither does Geely-Baidu. They don't have the specific answers.
I'm going to try because I've heard some things, but nothing really made sense. So I'm gonna, and I'm sure you will as well, Lei. Something triggered this, so I'm gonna try to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. Whether it was that rumor about the books, about they're losing them in the red and not having enough cash flow to support the company going forward. One of the parent companies got pissed. Right, these are all thrown out there. But I was gonna say that we end on this Jiyue by saying that I was at. I gave a talk to a group of about a dozen reporters at the Foreign Correspondents Club yesterday afternoon, and I said this Jiyue debacle represents the early innings of what I see a reset. The keyword reset in 2025. Basically, we're seeing that this bloodbath unsustainable, and we're gonna see more of the GVS, right? We haven't mentioned Neta. Neta is the other one. That's a little slightly better, but
They're on a watch. They're on a watch.
Yeah, they're on watch, and so there will be more casualties out of this bloodbath in 2025. So
I was
unfortunate,
on
but
a Reuters webinar, and how I quantified it, Lei, was that it's starting to be quantifiable now. The fallout, the reset that is happening, because you and I have been talking about this for a long time. We knew that the West was going to be in trouble, the Western automakers. I've been talking about it since 2018. I was driving down to Detroit with my wife and kind of like jumping on my soapbox. I was like, how can others not see this when I saw it so plainly? And the reason I say it's quantifiable is because such a high profile company in China, even though they never were on the top of the hill, they had these great backers, and even they were not able to be successful. And we look at a $5 billion write-down from General Motors in the China market. We look at Volkswagen now working with SAIC to reconcile their manufacturing footprint in China, and then Volkswagen working with their labor union in Europe and in Germany to try to close some factories. So now we're able to quantify some of the fallout and how large and how massive and how much it's going to affect. Stellantis firing Tavares and Cruise being shuttered. We'll talk about that in a second as well. So I'm in complete agreement that it's not just a China reset, it's a global reset, and now everybody understands it much more clearly because people are losing their jobs. Dollars and cents are starting to be communicated about what needs to happen, how much people are losing, how much companies, revenue, profits, companies are losing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that this reset is, as you've mentioned, is on many fronts. It's not only the demise of one or two companies, but it's the actions taken of in all the markets, right? You already mentioned a bunch of these, and not only the startups, but the traditional legacy automakers, they are doing to right size, right? The word we use is right size, to be profitable, to, and like a cruise or something that didn't make business sense, then let's cut it off. Volkswagen, if we need to shut plants, we shut plants. And it looks like they can't get around that in Europe, in Germany. And GM, right? Shanghai GM, that's obviously in play, reducing capacity. And if we look at the sales charts that I often keep track of, it's starting to become a thing where the strong gets stronger. Because when you see that chart, when you see that bar increasing at the top, and the rest of the players, Jiyue, I mean, you can't survive selling 14,000 units in 11 months when others are selling 14,000 units in a week, right? That's just...
And what should be pointed out, Lei, is that BYD, they're non-discriminatory. They're going to put Western legacies out of business, and they're going to put Chinese EV companies out of business.
Yeah. Interesting thing was Oliver Blume, Volkswagen Group CEO, was at the celebrations of... He gave a talk, right? He gave a talk at the Tongji University because he's an alumni.
That's his alma mater.
Yeah, alma mater, yeah. And there's two new things he mentioned that we haven't seen him mention before. One is he mentioned BYD. He said that their long term is to be on par with the BYD in the Chinese market. I think he's talking about total volume. I'm not sure about that. But the other thing he mentioned was this new 10-point plan for the Chinese market. That was, I think, the first time that was mentioned. So I think Volkswagen is just trying to show commitment, while at the same time doing what it needs to do. Be cost competitive. I think that was one of his points. And catching up on the smart EV side, as they have been doing. That process is ongoing, with 2026 being that first year of offensive. So next year,
which is a lifetime away. 2026 is a life.
Not too far away. We're only a few weeks, couple of weeks till 2025. So we can say 2026 is next year.
Yeah, in
So
like
not
3
too far
weeks we
away.
can officially say that. We can officially say that. You're right.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I appreciate about you, Lei. You always look at the glasses half full. So
yeah, but here's where I think I may be a little bit different, because you are a little bit more harsh on the Volkswagens, and I think when I talk about that reset, is that there will be foreign brands and foreign automakers that make it until well into the next decade, and not all of them will. But at the same time, there will also be the strong Chinese brands, and the weaker ones that'll have to become like a Jiyue, right? They become relevant. I do think the Chinese will dominate, but I think there's still a chance for the foreign automakers, and the joint ventures, they will still play a role into the 2030s. I don't think it's a Chinese winner take all. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. And let me be clear. Tesla, right? I'm tough. I'm tough on the legacies, but they'll be in existence. They're just not going to be as big, and they're not going to have as many brands, and they're not going to control the markets like they used to.
Right.
I think BYD is well on its way to becoming Toyota, and I don't see a clear-cut brand in China yet. I see the Xpungs and the Neos making significant moves to try to be the Hyundai, or not the Honda, but the Honda to buy BYD's Toyota. I still don't see clear-cut moves that would allow the second or third brand. Now, we could say Geely, but Geely is kind of a conglomerate of brands. And I think Geely is going to also have to shutter, one or two or three brands. Stellantis, Volkswagen Group being the other major automakers that will likely shutter some brands. GM is probably going to have Chevy leave the China market, focus more on Buick and Cadillac. And so, I'm not saying the Volkswagen Group is going to die. Let me be clear on that. But yeah, I do think there's going to be a presence for them in Europe and South America, smaller in North America. But man, they're not going to be the top player, the top sales guy in 10 years from now. Let me assure you of that.
Yeah, and actually, Ben in yesterday his face-to-face with the media, he actually mentioned about BYD already becoming in the future one of the top 10 global automakers. Well, they're number 5. So, yeah.
Man, we've been talking about some of this stuff. So go ahead. Neo notes. Let's move on to Neo notes.
Just to add that these reset also includes not only the cross-industry consolidation, but within companies. So you mentioned Geely, right? That process has already started. Zeekr, Lincoln Go, right? Some of the internal brands.
Well, it's confusing. Lincoln Co. and Zeekr, that's confusing as hell.
Yeah, I think eventually they become one. And Geely is kind of mum on it seems like they couldn't care less what happens to Ji Yue, because Ji Yue felt like a pilot. Because Geely already have so much on their plate, and it's kind of bad for Baidu. So
it felt like they just needed a brand to fill their factory with capacity, with orders. That's what it felt.
Yeah. All right.
Neo notes. What did you hear from Li Bin's press event?
I mean, this is ahead of. They do this now. I think they started doing this last year, so they do this a week ahead of Neo Day, kind of warm up, right? Kind of a warm up. And last year it took 140 questions. This year is 203 questions. You spent 2.5 hours standing and responding to these questions. It felt like he was confident, really confident about the two targets he has communicated, which is doubling sales 2025 and hitting profitability in 2026. And he was really confident that with now the Firefly brand, the 3 brands in play, it seems that for him, he can't think why they cannot get to that 450,000 units in 2025 and profitability. I think it's really confident, and I think I still kind of question that, but if it's tough because it's in this environment with what happened to Jiyue. I don't know. It's awfully tough. And then he also mentioned about a long-term scale of the Chinese auto market: 25 million units domestically and 15 million exported. So that's 40 million production, which is also kind of unfathomable. And he's saying the NEV take rate could at a certain point next year reach 70%. remember this year 50% for 5 consecutive months. I think he means at a certain monthly rate could hit 70% in 2025. So these are just mind-boggling numbers that it's even hard for us to comprehend, let alone the others.
And there were some comments floating around LinkedIn that said Europe is probably going to have all EVs next year. One thing to remember, Europe is a smaller base, so growth is a little bit easier, a lot easier.
Sure.
And if that is to be true, then BYD is going to sell a ton of PHEVs in Europe.
That's something to watch.
70% take rate means growth is still pretty substantial. That seems like a huge number. But he must be talking about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Within the Chinese brand passenger vehicles, within the Chinese brands, I think the take rate is already 70%. So, and domestic take rate was 50%, and domestic, the Chinese passenger vehicle brands is even higher. That's crazy. And then he just talked about Envo, expectations on Envo remaining in place, 10,000 in December, 20,000 in March. And then Firefly, I think the interesting point to note is that Firefly will not be able to swap at the existing Neo and Envo swap stations because it's smaller battery size. They will have this new container style swap station. Now that adds to more investment. But he's saying that
and complexity.
Well, he's saying that actually the investment and complexity will be less because of the smaller batteries, because of the experience they've accumulated. But Firefly obviously is geared toward. Okay, I'll tell them.
Okay. So he's saying subtraction by addition. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, see, that's why we question, right? I think these pictures our outlooks are rosy, but I mean, for us, we critique and question, right?
Hey Jeffrey, when you go down to Neo Day and talk to Lee Bin, ask him how this subtraction by addition works.
Well,
tell him to share the spreadsheet with us. So
he's saying that 20% of, I think this was mentioned, 20% of the battery swap stations already are profitable. So that, and also I think in the next short term, what happens with these battery swap朋友, the battery swap partners? I think he mentioned that one vehicle model is already doing winter testing from one of the OEM swap partners. So that'd be interesting. Really, the utilization of and the rollout of the battery stations themselves. I mean, he said he wished that they had a faster pace. He wished that there were 8,000 battery stations available right now.
This is a platform style business, so you can put as many charging and swapping stations out there, but if you don't, the sales don't come along for the ride, then that's an underutilized asset. And if 20% of your charging stations are profitable, that means 80% are not. So without increased sales, that's never. If you're continuing to add swapping stations, now I get it. There's new regions, new cities, new provinces that they're adding to, but I don't want to get into the numbers thing. But let's move on, man. Cruise, surprised? Thoughts?
A little bit surprised, but at the end of the day, it's a business decision. I mean, Maribara, she felt that it wasn't worth it, basically. If you put into the operational things, managing the operations, given the Waymo's lead, and that it's also a sad thing that have happened. That since we've been on it 2 years ago.
But now that we've tried Waymo seemed much more impressive.
Yeah, but that had that accident not have happened, could it have been different outcome? Maybe.
But
and then
the management challenges would still be there because Kyle Vaught would still be, all these things that were festering under the radar. Something would have happened that would have exposed all this because
I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember who posted this. Someone tweeted that this was a EV1 moment for AVs. So this is a AV1 moment for GM.
But this is the crazy thing about GM. They were the pioneers in the connected vehicle space with OnStar. Did nothing with that. Pioneers in the EV space with EV1. Did nothing with that. And
pioneers
they came in
with their Cruise. Yeah.
hot and heavy. And that's not to say that GM has given up on robotaxis because they've partnered with Momenta in a big way in the China market. And so Momenta has a few different OEM partners. I think Toyota is one of them. But what if GM rolled out a robotaxi in China before it rolled out one in the US? That would be kind of crazy, huh? I think we're going to look back on this, Lei, as a missed opportunity for General Motors. Now, Cruise has its own pimples that it needed to kind of manage and take care of, but the opportunity was right. How it was managed was wrong. Putting $1 billion a year into it and then letting the Silicon Valley team, San Francisco team kind of manage things, that wasn't right. Because at the end of the day, a year and a half ago, Lei, they had 3 cruises. There was Ultra Cruise, Super Cruise, and Cruise. Like, what is going on at GM, man? So, and like, I thought 3 or 4 years ago, I was convinced that Mary was the best manager of the D3, but now it's like with all this folly of errors, and I don't think that $5 billion write down is enough. So in China, but I digress.
I think looking back, yeah.
Go ahead.
Looking back over on Mary's career, I think she's always been swift with some of the decisions, right? Pulling out of Europe. No,
they did a Stellantis, Lei.
Yeah,
they didn't pull out of Europe because they entered France again with Cadillac.
Well, sure. But the more interesting thing is, in my opinion, the PAV, the personal autonomous vehicle that she talked about, that this could be something, this is where she's leaning toward Tesla, that these vehicles you can drive on your own, but they could also become your own robotaxis in level 4 mode. I think this was what she was hinting at. And that's something that's quite interesting that she talked about, I think 3 years ago when she announced that Ultra Cruise. Where does that go? I mean, in the kind of the Tesla FSD sphere, do we have the second version of Tesla FSD? Yeah.
So we know that Ford has Blue Cruise. We know that GM has Super Cruise, and those are the 2 intelligent driving systems that they're going to be focusing on for the foreseeable future. And Waymo has no peer in North America now. And so I see a strengthened Waymo. Elon probably smiled when he heard that GM was shuttering Cruise.
Sure did.
But, hey, anything else that you wanted to talk about? You wanted to talk about CATL in Spain?
Well, CATL, again, goes back to our earlier conversation about the reset. This was a reset in the battery space. It was a reset for Stellantis. It was, let's face the reality. Who do we partner with? And where do we set up that joint venture?
Well,
Spain.
Stellantis is spreading its bets because they've also invested in not Lighton, but ACC, which is building a factory in France. So, I think that they know who the winning horse is right now, but they're looking at potential thoroughbreds for the future. So,
no, I was saying Spain, right? Spain, I think Spain did not vote for the tariff, right? Or did they have the no?
I think they voted. I think they abstained.
Abstained, yeah. That's the word I was looking for. But again, right? You're seeing this play out. This European automakers having to depend on the Chinese, and now Stellantis, right? Two, CATL and Lead Motor. Well, interesting where that Lead Motor could go because Tavares is out. I'm sure whoever is the new CEO, they'll have to look at that and what happens there. The other things would,
No, I just wanted to mention that. Remember when they were in talks with PSA, FCA was how long that took to. So hopefully the Stellantis board understands that they need to put leadership in quickly to figure out what to do with their investment in Leap Motor and how they're going to share technology, if they're going to do that, if the new CEO even wants to do that. And then, these major investments, because no CEO, but this announcement gets made that they're investing $4 billion in a joint venture with CATL, or they're each investing money totaling 4 billion euros. So, I agree.
Yeah, and then again, reset. Mercedes, Nissan, their top China management changed starting next year. Beijing Hyundai, they injected an additional $1 billion into the joint venture. Right? Interesting times as we head, into this post JV smart EV era dominated by the Chinese, and we're looking at these changes and moves. And interesting, the Mercedes new guy for China, he was the product czar. I think he's the one, Oliver Thon, he is the one that already planned out products out into the 2030. It's very interesting to see what happens there in the Chinese market.
Hey, so Lei, let's open it up. Now that I've opened this LinkedIn window, there have been some comments on LinkedIn, so that I didn't see last week because I didn't have the LinkedIn window open. So thank you for posting on LinkedIn, Conrad and Mark. So Jeffrey, he first of all, he wishes us happy holidays. So happy holidays, Jeffrey. What a statement on BYD. They are not taking any prisoners at all. And that probably irks the Chinese government a little bit, I would think.
Yeah.
2025, a massive growth phase ahead. He's referring to NIO, I think, in your statements. William has some big plans. Yes, he does. I don't know if the math works out. And it sounds like Lei is skeptical of some of that math as well. 400 to 450,000 units is pretty conservative, according to some. Jeffrey, I'm sure that's pretty conservative to you, or at least you're hoping that that 400, 450 is conservative.
Even Li Ben, he mentioned that was kind of conservative, given the plan, given the brands, given the product plans. of what they have in store.
Counter that though, Lei, with He Xiaopeng during AI Day saying that the price war is going to continue through 2025. So the economists that Li Bin and He Xiaopeng have must not agree on certain foundational numbers. So, Jeffrey, I hope you don't have to sell a kidney. I think you're going to be okay. Maybe you just have to eat some cheap ramen in Guangzhou for the next year and a half. Remember, a Neo Capital investment at Alton uses container-style swap batteries. Yes, but Alton is like not doing anything. Here, Jeffrey also says Mary Barr might have to pull a John DeLorean to save GM from all this bloodletting on their incompetence. So, are you saying that she's going to import cocaine in the vehicles? Because, anyways, funny stuff. Now I'm going to go to LinkedIn now. So if I'm not looking at the camera, my apologies.
And then the only other thing we can have some fun to end the show is, how do you pronounce the new Xiaomi SUV?
U7.
That's what I think as well. Like you are you. U7.
So,
well, in Chinese, it will be Yuqi.
Yeah.
And Lei Xing, he posted, right? He posted on Weibo that it's just pronounced Yuqi.
Yuqi, okay. So, friend of the show, friend of ours, Lei Conrad, are the days of brand proliferation. Yeah. Are the days of brand proliferation in the China market over?
Brand proliferation meaning this brand movement?
I think any new brands and being successful, I guess.
We have remember, I think it was GAC Group that signed that new deal with Huawei that was rumored to have a new brand. I think so. I think we're at the end of this brand movement, especially given this Jiyue. Firefly is the newest one that'll be announced. I mean, I'm not sure.
Well, we have to keep an eye out for the Audi brand.
Dying down. I think the answer I would say is dying down, definitely, because we're in that reset, as I talked about.
Right.
A reset phase.
Now, there could be new transportation companies that pop up, like an Uber, like a Didi kind of thing, like services.
Yeah. But
okay. Yeah. Mark Wilcox, who I met in California recently, 51% majority owned U.S. Chinese EV makers in the U.S. in the next 4 years. So he's saying basically what happened in China he's asking if that's going to happen in the U.S.
So we copy the playbook.
Copy the playbook. I believe that there will be a wholly owned, like a Wolfie, a Chinese company building in the United States within Trump's term. Job one will roll up the line before Trump's last day in office. Now, I haven't really thought through the whole JV thing, but, that seems logical, especially because Stellantis and Volkswagen already own huge stakes in Chinese companies. Now, will they support them in building in the United States or North America? That remains to be seen. But I guess, I guess the question, I'll amend that question. Like, do you see one of the D2 creating a JV with a Chinese company in the U.S. in the next 4 years?
So the U.S. does not have a auto industry development policy, which, it's abolished, right? That the joint venture rule in China is abolished, but the U.S. don't have one that says that you cannot hold more than 50% share as a joint venture partner, right? I don't know. I think it depends on what Trump's requirement is. If he adds any new requirements, but to me, I think the path is a possible path is a some kind of a Tesla style. Why do you need to work with? I think that the key point is to build locally and to employ local talent and jobs, right? I mean, that's what Trump wants, not from Mexico. And
I'm glad you said that, Lei,
will the
because
Chinese be one? Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, Lei, because the foreign automakers did it in China because it was a requirement, number one. Number two, they didn't understand the China market, and they needed help that way. They didn't understand the Chinese culture from a work standpoint. The products that they had, they didn't know if they were going to be attractive to Chinese consumers. You and I, as Americans that have lived in China, you being ethnically Chinese, we know that the vehicles that China is making currently will sell to Americans on day one. So there's not a lot of need unless we're looking at a dealership model. Okay. I think that really is different and could be an opportunity where a GM might help create a sales channel or multiple sales channels for a Chinese EV maker. That makes more sense than having them manufacture together. So that's my take on it. And then
Yeah. And then Li Bian
what's
specifically say yesterday adamantly that they're not looking at the US market
so
for now.
So Conrad, I think we answered that. What's holding Neo back? I think we talked about that a little bit. He also mentions Cruise tried to scale too soon. That was GM's fault. And then Cruise technology is being repurposed for GM's ADAS. Cruise confirmed. Now, Conrad, I would kind of pose the question this way. Reports say that between $8 and $10 billion was invested total into Cruise. There's not likely $8 to $10 billion worth of IP coming out of that Cruise blowing up. So does that make it a prudent investment on Cruise if we do Monday morning quarterbacking? Probably not. And the Cruise employees that were laid off, they'll have an opportunity to roll into the General Motors. But if I'm a true believer and I bleed Silicon Valley and San Francisco, I'm probably not wanting to stay with G. And so they're probably going to lose a lot of great talent because of shuttering Cruise, unfortunately. But yes, Cruise technology is definitely and I don't, one of the basic questions that we should ask in 2025, Lei, is, are these legacy OEMs collecting data with the current vehicles they're selling? What are they doing with that data? And, do they see, or are they extracting any insights that would create revenue generating opportunities for them in the future? So it's not clear to me who is really, really leaning into the data part. The other thing too is that, I guess we could just look on the D2 or D3's balance sheet to see who's invested a lot in data centers and cloud services, So
Tesla has.
So that's all
that.
That's yeah, exactly. They've leaned into it, right? But that's all I have, man.
So I'll end by leaving some numbers. So 2024 will end big numbers, right? Big picture numbers. 13 million NEVs production and sales. 31 million autos, everything. Nearly 6 million exports. Probably a fifth of that are NEVs. 50% take rate, right? That new tipping point is now going forward. NEVs outselling ICE EVs will be the new normal. Have become the new normal in the Chinese market. So those are just some of the numbers that I'll leave.
Sorry. Yep. I was looking at a Car News China, and they were like, currently there's 27.5 million units of production so far through November, which is is a crazy, crazy number. Now, you and I know that rule of thumb, right? whatever sales are or production to a lesser extent, double that, and that's capacity. So
60 million capacity, man.
and it's only going to get this is where you and I have to keep track on the China side of what the government's going to do, because the protectionism is not going to go away in 2025. What are they going to do with all that capacity? So we're likely to see some more factory closings in 2025, not just from the foreign automakers trying to right-size themselves in the China market, but there's probably going to be some high-profile SOEs that have to close factories too. So that's my guess.
And especially given the wording of this economic work conference about stabilizing the social environment, people's livelihood, that'll be interesting to watch.
The last thing I'll say about the Ji Yue and the videos on social media, a lot of those folks had never been laid off, had never lost a job. Now, more and more of them are starting to understand what an economic downturn is. But let's say 3 or 4 years ago, pre-COVID, if you were 35 years or younger, you've only seen the economy grow in your lifetime. And so you're super optimistic about everything. And people like you and me, Lei, we're, as Americans, we've seen ups and downs all over the place, housing market, job market. And so our minds are kind of trained to be able to manage those ups and downs and still survive. Whereas for a lot of younger Chinese people, this is a completely new thing. And so you see the frustration and exasperation and the fear. You hear the fear in these people's voices. And so this is where it is very sad. Because I don't want anyone in the United States to get laid off. So, and that goes for China as well, because you and I still have a lot of dear friends in China and Asia. So I just wanted to be clear on that so people understand that this is very new to a lot of people in China. So, everyone, thanks for joining us as always. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will see and you'll hear from us next week.
And and we'll think about, there's 2 more Fridays to go, I think, in December. Maybe we'll
so that means we have one show,
that,
because I'm gonna take the last week of December off. So
maybe we'll do a recap or something. Top 10 news.
So do we take off next week or the week after? So maybe this is, well, everyone, we will see you and we can talk about this offline, Lei.
Yeah. Good night from my side, and good morning, good afternoon.